Well, welcome everyone to Lotus Chat episode 20, Mental and Emotional Freedom. Thank you to everyone who's joining us yet again for one of our weekly episodes. And to everyone who's new, we welcome you and hope that you will stay on this journey with us as we continue to talk about many topics, not only affecting women, but everyone in general. And today's episode, we have three of our lovely Lotus ladies here with us. We have Laura. We have Zian.
Hello.
And I know we are deeply missing our other two Lotus ladies today, but hopefully they can join us next week. And as I mentioned on today's topic, it's a very interesting one regarding mental and emotional freedom. And really what it comes down to is answering that question, what is mental and emotional freedom? Very big topic. A lot of things come into my mind when I think about that question. And I think I actually would like to start off with having Deanne. What is mental and emotional freedom from your perspective?
Thank you, Jen. For me, from my perspective, I think mental and emotional freedom happens when we are free from judgment on ourselves. When we don't judge ourselves for certain things that we could have, we should have. All these words that we tell ourselves. So freedom from judgment on ourselves and in our minds, thinking that other people are judging us when it has not happened, before. So I think free from judgment, that's when mental and emotional freedom happens. What do you think, Laura?
Thank you, Zian. I agree with everything you said. In my journey, I've learned that it's my ego. That ego is there to protect us. As a little kid, you learn if you touch the stove and it's hot, you get burned. You don't go in front of a bus or a truck or a car because you might get run over. So that your mind tells you all of these things for protection. The problem is that as we get older, we kind of know, don't walk in front of a car, and I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but one of the things I've learned is our minds tend to overprotect us. And so it kind of keeps us in a box. And then I've learned in myself, I look to external people to validate me. So I say, is this the person I should date? Or is this the degree I should get in college? Or is this the job I should take? Or is this the neighborhood I live in? Is this how I discipline my child? All of these questions. And what I've learned is I need to learn to just trust my inner judgment, my inner self, my inner soul. And for me, that's emotional and mental freedom. It's when I live in a box and I live within the rules and the fear of what it is that's going to happen. For me, that's not freedom. That is kind of being in a box. And so as I was listening to this topic and kind of preparing for it, I realized that instead of looking externally, I have to look internally. How about you, Jen? Tell us what your experience is.
Oh, well, Laura, thank you. That was wonderful for you to explain your own experience and really giving us like your own perspective and insight into that. It is definitely a pretty big topic because mental freedom and emotional freedom, I mean, those are two things that we can easily have a whole podcast about. I mean, really think about it. But we are going to try to do our best today to bring it all together for you, the viewer and the listener who's following us on Spotify. And yes, I agree with you with both what you and Zian said, that mental and emotional freedom really comes down to having presence and being in self-awareness. I do agree with the fact that there are times where we do put ourselves in this mental and emotional box. I think sometimes it comes from upbringing, sometimes it comes from external influences that we've held on to for a very long time. I do, in my reading and what I've read, in regards to like emotions and how to interact with others and come to that self-awareness, all of it comes down to just really taking time to listen to yourself and what you really want to do, or what you're really feeling in the moment. I would have to say that I have allowed myself to, and at times, be influenced by other people and situations. And in that case, I had felt trapped, because I mean, freedom really is the ability to go up out of the box, as Laura said, to put down those mental and physical prisons that you've put yourself in, telling yourself that it's not possible, or that it's, you know, I am this way, like I'm weak, I am not strong, I am unlovable, I am unworthy. I mean, these are all different words you can use to put yourself in a mental, emotional box. And I think once you're able to realize that, oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing, awareness is key. And it's the first part of being able to open that door, open that, you know, those bars, and get yourself out of it. For me, true freedom, whether mental or emotional, really comes down to the realization that there are no boundaries, that most of the boundaries are self-imposed. Even, you know, society will tell you, like, you know, as women, we can't do this. As women, we don't have these rights. As women, XYZ. It really comes down to what you as a person feel that you are capable of. And it's endless. If we all felt like, there's a famous quote by one of my favorite actresses, Audrey Hepburn, who said about the, you know, there's I in impossible. Like, it's one of her quotes where she says, there's I in impossible, which means I am possible. And that just, you know, is something I've carried with me. And I think that, you know, if we realize that nothing is permanent, things can change, you don't always have to stay in that little box, and that it's okay to take chances and take risks, as long as you're safe. That's it.
I love that, Jen. I love it. And I wanted to also bounce back on what you mentioned about presence. And I love that, because when you talk about presence, it just reminds me sometimes when I'm at a particular moment and my mind goes very far forward thinking to like the future, not just next week, but next year, you know, and what happens backwards. But I'm not in the present. And that's when I feel that I'm mentally and emotionally caged. I'm not free, because I'm thinking, I'm here, but I'm thinking, you know, next year and last year, you know. So to be able to be present, like you said just now, Jen, it's like so important to get that freedom, because everything is impermanent, right? It's ever changing.
Absolutely.
I think that we're kind of used to the GPS method of living life. We want to get to a destination, and we really don't care how we get there. Usually, I use Waze, but there's Google and all types of maps. And it's usually which is the fastest way, which is the way with the least amount of turns, which is the least amount of traffic. And what I've learned is you miss the fun of the trip if you're only focused on getting there. When I was growing up, we'd go on trips, and my dad is a retired highway patrolman, and he only knew one way to get there, and that was fast. And we couldn't stop, and because that's how he was taught. You get in a car, you drive, and you go. But we always wanted to stop at places along the way, and in his mind the goal was to get to the end destination. And that's kind of how many of us live life. We're looking at where is it that we want to go. The problem is we miss the fun things along the way, but we also miss there might be a better destination. We might change our mind along the way. There might be something even better, but we're so busy getting to that end. And so for me, living in the present is, yeah, these are my goals or my intentions for the future, but this is where I am today, and I want to have peace and joy today. And let's see where it takes me. How am I going to get there, and what does there look like when I get there? So I'm a big believer in living in the present, because I don't want to miss a moment.
I love that, and enjoying the process. And I'm so grateful for all you Lotus Chat ladies that we could enjoy this process of creating episodes for Lotus Chat together. So I'm curious, how do you think, what are some of the unhealthy ways that people do when they feel a lack of freedom? Jen,
You're on mute, Jen. There she is. She's back.
Well, that is definitely a great question, Zian. I think there are definitely a number of ways that people exercise when they feel a lack of freedom. I think the word addiction does come to mind in terms of like sometimes we use other things to cope with feeling that sense of feeling trapped or feeling that we're in this mental and emotional box, prison per se, if I were really to say that. In my personal experience, I think the way I have coped before I started going on this wonderful journey with the Lotus ladies here and the people within my coaching leadership workshop seminar is that for me, it became more of using other things to distract myself. And that was my method of coping. So in my case, it was people. It was unhealthy relationships that I didn't think were unhealthy, but at the time they made me, I felt good in the moment, but then, what happens when it ends? Like it was a cycle of not really feeling a sense of self. I definitely lost myself in that journey. And other things I'd use to cope would be not really speaking my feelings. That's one of the ways that I know, not only me, but people that are very close to me sometimes use to cope, which is they don't really talk about their feelings. They kind of just bury it. And I definitely think if you are to become fully free, the first thing you need to do is feel the feelings. And I know we have a Lotus episode about that, where we talk about the ways you can feel the feelings. So I encourage everybody out there, if you want to get to a place of true freedom, first realize that possibilities are endless. Be aware that you are in that state of feeling that sense of being in a box or not free, and take that practice to just start feeling all of that. If you need to write it down, put it in a journal. If you need to talk to yourself in the mirror, which I've done myself before, do it. I know it's weird at first, but when you start really talking to the person in the mirror, which is you, you realize that, oh my gosh, yes, that was an unhealthy thing for me to do. I probably shouldn't be talking about myself that way. So in the end, those are some of the things that I've noticed are unhealthy ways of coping with a lack of freedom.
Jen, that was profound. Thank you. As I was thinking of this question, there are so many different ways to stuff the hole. I call it the hole. It's when we're not happy or we're not satisfied, or there's something that or we feel like we're a prisoner, or whatever that feeling is, that there's something lacking. So we tend to find ways to fill it, and we don't even realize we're doing it. There's always, we talk about people who are addicted to drugs or alcohol or, all of those things, but there are other ways to be addicted. We can be addicted to sex. We can be addicted to food. We can be addicted to people. I know people that can't be alone. I don't know how they do it, but they are on 24/7. For me, I know this sounds crazy, but for me, it was shopping. Man, I was always at the mall, at the store, buying something, because if I had that next outfit, I would feel better and look better. And then it would feel, and I not only had one closet, I had 2 and 3. And it was amazing. I was still looking for that outfit that was going to actually make me feel better. Lucky for me, I figured out what the problem was. And it was amazing how when I started dealing with self and the things that were lacking, the shopping kind of dissipated. It was amazing how that happened. It wasn't overnight, but it did happen. So I think that we all need to look at ourselves and say, what are we feeling? What are we not feeling? And I think for me, the scariest part when I realized I really needed help was someone asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And what are you looking for in a relationship? And I couldn't answer the question. I just looked, I stuttered, I stammered, and it's not like I don't understand the English language, but what happened was I've been so busy taking care of other people or worried about other people, I never really checked in with Laura to see what did Laura really want. And when I realized I couldn't answer that question, that was my journey to say, how do I find emotional and mental freedom? And what does that look like? And it took me a very long time to really listen to find out what it was that I wanted. But I think if you find that you're utilizing, and unhealthy doesn't have to mean alcohol or drugs, it can mean shopping, it can mean anything. It can mean sports, whatever it is. I know people that run 12 miles a day, bless their heart. And that's how they get their addiction out. So whatever it is for you, instead of saying, how do I stop the addiction, look at what is it that I'm trying to uncover and what is it that I'm trying to hide. And it's amazing how that addiction, I'm not saying 100% of the time, but it's amazing how that's not quite as important when you start filling your heart and your soul with what it's missing.
What you just shared. Yeah, what you just shared reminded me of, yes, the training that we all went through. And one of the first things they asked was, what are you pretending not to know? And I thought that was a brilliant question. Like, it is true. We always pretend not to know. And for me, I pretend not to know through busyness. Like, I'm very busy. I'm pretending to be busy, but I'm actually busy, real busy, work, studies, blah, blah, blah. But it's just that busyness is also a choice.
Yeah,
it's not that you don't have a choice. You intentionally just put yourself so cramped up your schedule so that you don't have to sit and think what you're feeling. You don't have to sit and feel the feelings. So for me, busyness was one of the ways that I could distract myself for a while until I could not. And that's when I figure out on healthy ways to deal with, to get that mental and emotional freedom. And one of the ways that really worked for me is my daily exercise. So I really stick to that routine. It really helps. I get my mind from really jumble up to clarity after I have a good time at the gym and I sweat and all the good hormones come out. So that really helps. I think the other way that I always do is I like to process the feelings with a person, a friend, and kind of more like sometimes what we need from that friend is for that friend to listen. That's it. Yeah. But it's a scary process to feel the feelings, I think. But we always hear this. Every breakdown leads to breakthrough, but you must be willing to go through the breakdown.
Zian, thank you for saying that. I can relate to what you said about keeping yourself busy. I'm going to admit that in the most difficult times and emotional times of my life, I've used work as a coping mechanism. And that is how I've kind of not allowed myself to get too emotional and kind of to that breakdown, as you called it. But I've realized that it's necessary. It was necessary for me to go through that breakdown so I can let the emotions out, because I realized that it was leading to quite a few things. Like, I was getting sick. I was getting headaches. I was, my body just wasn't feeling good when I would bottle it all in and focus on my work. And I realized that for everyone out there who has a very healthy exercise routine to help with these things, thumbs up on that. I need to start practicing that myself. So but again, Zian, thank you for that reminder of something I've gone through as well.
What do you think, Laura? What are some of the
that's
healthy ways?
Well, I was just thinking, I'm sorry, my mind works in mysterious ways. I realize that. What does it look like to be on the other end when we reach mental and emotional freedom? I think so many times what we do is we talk about the problem and what it looks like, but what would it look like if we actually got to the destination? For me, what mental and emotional freedom is, and I have to tell you, these are terms that it took me a long time to understand. I remember going to life coach for the first time and hearing some of these terms, and I'm like, what is she talking about? But the first one is being at peace and loving yourself. If others couldn't love me, how could I possibly love myself? But learning to love and admire who you are, because you are wonderfully made, each one of us. And so it's learning how to be in love with ourselves, because when we love ourselves, that radiates out. So mental and emotional freedom frees you of the constraints of I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, or I can't really let my real self out, or else people will see who I really am. I think the second thing is mental and emotional freedom allows you to be authentic and be who you truly are and unashamed of it. And I think the third thing that a mental and emotional freedom looks like in someone is someone that is at peace and at joy with where they are. We all want something different. There's always something better out there. We all want to walk the next mile. But are you content with where you are today? Can you say my soul is at rest? And so when we find emotional and mental freedom, our mind slows down, our heart is full, and we're able to just sit in the moment, love ourselves, radiate that peace to others, and be content. And that's what we all strive for, but it's the journey to get there. And it's a very hard journey, but it's so worth it. So I would like, before we leave tonight, to tell you it is a place to be. It's where we all strive to be, where the outside is not as important as what's on the inside. And that's the goal of your GPS.
I super love that, Laura. The inner peace, and what's really important is inside, right? That really reminded me in closing, yeah. One of the poster that I wrote in that book, Secrets of the Mental Warrior, that I co-wrote,
Yes.
is about this: the greatest love that you could give yourself is self-talk. And that's a popular poster among all the women, because as women, what we say to ourselves is really, really important. And we talk to ourselves so much in a day. Yeah. So if you like what we heard today, I just want to encourage you to click subscribe on YouTube, and also click follow on Spotify. We always welcome viewers' requests. So if you have any topics that you would really love for us to touch upon, please email us at lotuschatworldwide@gmail.com, because our goal here as women is really to share our stories, our experience, and to bounce off each other's on ideas so that we can empower women collectively. So in the next topic, we will be discussing about self-image and society. And the question we've got for you this week is, how can you practice mental and emotional freedom? So signing off, I'm Zian. See you next week.
I'm Laura. See you next week.
I'm Jen. See you next week.